We good?
A couple more seconds.
Okay.
And it's recording.
All right. It's 6 o'clock and I'll call this meeting of MUD 47 to order. The first item on the agenda is comments from the public. Do we have anyone that signed up to speak?
Mr. Unlin.
Okay, Mr. Unland,
Yeah.
go ahead.
Good evening, board, and congratulations to the new board. I had two things I wanted to make comment on. One is about transparency. And I really hope this board makes it a mission to be more transparent. And certainly that is a big step. So, thanks to the old board for getting that done, even though it took a long time, it's there. But that's not the whole story, because I'll give you three examples of ways that the boards are generally not transparent. One is handouts. So there'll be a meeting and there'll be a discussion and there'll be a packet, but additional information is provided during the meeting. It's just handed to y'all. Well, the public has no chance to see that information. Doesn't even know what y'all are talking about. Sometimes y'all are talking about item 7 on the 3rd page and there's no clue what's going on. So if it's not in the packet, it seems like the public doesn't have a chance to see it. And if the public doesn't have a chance to see it, there's no point in the public making a comment. So it needs to be in packets, need to be complete. They need to have all the handouts. Second, I noticed in the minutes, and this might be just policy, I don't know. I noticed that a lot of times don't identify how people voted in a meeting. It just says it was unanimous, which is fine. Or it'll say it was 3, 4, and 2 against. And that may be technically all that's required for the law, but that leads to later people can say, I voted for that when they actually didn't, or you voted against it when you actually did. And so it could be a misinterpretation. It could be bad memory. It could be lies, but you don't know until you write it down. So it seems like if it's not a unanimous vote, you need to say how people voted. I mean, we're all going to be presumably re-electing y'all. And if we don't know how you voted, then we don't have a good basis for that. And then last, and this is a good example this time, there was public comments by one of the directors last time that said that there was a handout that was going to be included in minutes. That's not minutes. It just says that he made comments and that the comments would be included in minutes, but they're not in minutes. So the minutes seems to be, they need to be complete, and these are ways that they need to be complete in the packet and in the discussion and in any extra materials. The second, that's my first point, sorry, transparency. Second, I see that the developed and non-developed status is going to be discussed today. Just a little short synopsis over the past year. This will be the 3rd designation of whether or not we're developed or not developed this year, in the past year. In July of last year, we certified that we were not developed. Then in September of last year, we changed that to being developed because of an error in the certification. And then now in June, we're not developed. And so that number seems to be bouncing around, and I don't know why. I hope that y'all do not certify that we're developed until somebody does an audit of the information, how we're getting the information, and who's making these certifications, and make it public as to what the numbers are. Don't just say it's less than the number or greater than the number. Give us a number. That way we can track it. Thank you.
Good, thank you, Mr. Unland. So next on the agenda is consider an act on request for adjustments to or relief from the specific charges imposed by the district. Nothing? Okay. The next item is the consent agenda. We call it that because usually these are items that we always approve. But we can pull things from the consent agenda if we would like to discuss them. So item number 4, I would like to pull based on the comments from the public. Do I have a motion then to pass items 5 through 8 of the consent agenda? Okay, Paul, do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor of passing the consent agenda items 5 through 8? Say aye.
Aye.
Okay, it's passed. So on number 4, I would like for us to improve the meeting minutes to reflect how we voted this last time and on future votes, if the vote wasn't unanimous. So are we in agreement there on that, or would you?
Well, I
Go
just
ahead,
have a
Paul.
comment.
Mhm.
We just got to the point where we finally transparent in terms of both recording and videotaping, or video digitally taping, or whatever the right words are these days, our meetings. And frankly, I think one of the first things we need to do as we enter this new world is, we have Mr. Unland here who's doing his own videotaping, okay? And I think that the board needs to take the position, or at least have a discussion about what's the official video and recording for this meeting? Is it what we're doing, or is it something else? And I think that wherever there's an issue, okay, it should defer to the actual video and recording.
Of course, I agree.
I don't know whether we have to have something on a future agenda, the next agenda, to approve that, but I think that's where we should be going.
Well, I believe that our asset here, this camera that's recording us, will always be, it is the property of Woodlands Water Agency now, and what it records is what we own, and it is where the buck stops. So I think that that's pretty clear.
So I think if y'all want to have an item for a future agenda to discuss.
What's official?
Right, because technically the recording it's just an aid. Your official recordation or your official actions are from the minutes. And so that's what we have as your permanent record. I don't know what ultimately Woodlands Water or each of the MUDs decide in terms of how long to keep the recordings. I think we put in there a minimum of, I think it was 2 years or whatever the shorter time period that was required by the Texas Public Information or Texas State Library and Archives Commission. So after that, those could theoretically be discarded. But minutes have to be kept forever because they're your official record of your meeting. If y'all would like to talk about fleshing those out some more, now by law, you just have to record action of the district. Everything else is optional. What you include that somebody says in public comment, if you have attachment, all that kind of how you document votes. That's all not legally required, but optional for you to put in there to further flesh out your decision making. So if y'all want to talk about that some more, that's a little outside of what the action item is to consider approval of these particular minutes, but we could put something on a future agenda to talk about that, how y'all want to document official action going forward.
Very good. We better do that then. So we'll talk about how long to keep the recordings, how we want the minutes recorded as far as recording votes. And some notice that this is our official recording, while we know that the printed meeting minutes are the more important thing that we need to do for the law, right? Okay, so we'll put that on the agenda for next month. And the part that Mr. Unland mentioned about Paul's comments, I spoke with Shelley before the meeting, and in this file folder are our meeting minutes from last month. And you need to sign this as a board secretary. You'll see the sign tab. Anyway, in there are Paul's comments, and they will be put out to the website. So his comments will be included in there. So, and we can fix how we voted last time?
Which item were you looking at?
On the vote for the board officers. And so it said that perhaps, how the trustee vote went, for example. And so it passed that Hugh Connett was our trustee, but it wasn't a unanimous vote.
You're gonna ask for the minutes to be just to reflect that.
Okay,
Within 7
Like-
minutes, yes.
okay. So I'd like to do that.
Have the notes to reflect how the vote was.
Yeah.
Okay, so now that,
Question?
Yeah.
Just, Brian, are there different kind of votes that have to be actually called out to vote versus just a seconded and then approved? Or
No, so every vote, the normal process is just, do we have a motion, do we have a second, and then we'll have further
Favor.
discussion. And then you'll call the vote, all those in favor, any against, and so if it's unanimous, I think, we don't have to say who voted. But anyway, I don't want to veer off into discussion how y'all have it in the future. So this set of minutes, I think if y'all want to have particular votes that were not unanimous with the directors called out as to, for or against, then you can ask for the secretary to revise this set of minutes to reflect that. I think that's within the purview of item 4. Y'all can ask for that. That's-
okay, cool.
And then we can talk about how you want to do it going forward at next.
Next.
Gotcha.
Good, then I think we're set. Do I have a motion to approve consent agenda item number 4?
As revised.
As revised, thank you very much.
A motion.
Okay, then do I have a second?
I'll second.
All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right, so we're done with the consent agenda. The regular agenda, item number 9, is receive an SJRA and Woodlands Division report.
Good afternoon. So on pages 30 to 35 is an update on the strategic plan. That is basically the minutes from our last progress meeting, our internal progress meeting. Excuse me. We talked about some baseline rehabilitation options. We also talked about some consolidated options. So all the minutes are in there. You can read through those and see. A couple items to add is July 12th is the next stakeholder meeting. At that meeting, we will go over everything, the baseline rehab, as well as cost, as well as the consolidated option and cost. It is all high level, still needs some direction from the stakeholders of the buds, fine tune a few things. Then we'll come back later on with additional information.
Will you be able to attend, Paul? That
Yep.
July 12th? You're good?
The last item on the strategic plan that I had to update you on is July 1st is a, new director, strategic plan orientation, I guess.
Workshop orientation, yes.
So it's July 1st, 10 to 1. So if y'all are interested, come on in. I think we're asking for 2, so we don't get a quorum.
Well, no, it's really, as long as you don't deliberate, we can have more than 3 or more directors there. It'll be something similar to the new director workshop, but this will be really just an update on the wastewater strategic plan for new directors, other directors that want to kind of revisit some of the information. No decisions will be made, just a presentation. So we would encourage all the directors that are available to attend.
July 1, 10 to 1?
You got it.
All right.
Woodlands office where the new director orientation is.
Okay.
We are also, appreciate that, Ed reminding me, that morning between 8 a.m. and 10 a.m. prior to the stakeholder, the strategic plan orientation, 2 meetings. We are going to do a little bit of Q&A on the budget for FY23. So if anybody's interested, has any questions on the FY23 Woodlands Division budget, just let Jim and Shelley know, and then we'll be happy to have you. Yes, sir.
I do have a question. So a while back, you presented us with a 10-year plan,
Yes, sir.
right? Given the changing nature of our economy right now, our employee marketplace, as well as what probably will be interest rates moving substantially ahead, have you guys sat down and started to, or the financial folks started to lay that out and re-examine it? Are those prices and those costs to finance, et cetera, being relooked at and, if you will, reformulated?
So we look at them once a year on a general nature every January to February. So these numbers were current as of February. So obviously they're out of date already. Everything's going on. Officially, we're going to sit down and look at them next January, February. But unofficially, I guess in about 2 to 3 weeks, we do have an internal meeting along with the financial advisors, just to kind of talk about long-term financing options and if those numbers are still valid, what the numbers should be going. I think that's July 8th, if I can read it.
Okay.
And so we'll meet internally, we'll kind of get some recommendations, some thoughts together, re-examine costs. Then we'll talk with Jim and his staff and kind of, you know, approach them and show them what we're thinking about before we take it to the audit committee, the trustees, and everything else. It's a long process, a lot of steps, but across a lot of T's, dot a lot of I's.
Thanks.
Very good. You're done?
I'm done, but Ed's got one item.
Update on infrastructure funding, two projects specifically. As you know, we've been working with the political consultant to talk to federal and state legislators to ensure that as they're preparing rules for how funds are distributed, that Woodlands is, as a special district, is not excluded from being eligible for funding. So we're still working on that. And then the other item is we've gotten a little more information on the Bear Branch Dam rehabilitation project. Congressman Crenshaw is pushing for a federal contribution of 3.6 million, which would leave a local participation of 1.6. The only difference is, we spend it first and the feds would reimburse. And the model agreement that I have in my hands that we're reviewing says within 30 days of expenditure of funds, you apply for reimbursement. And they say that you'll be reimbursed subject to federal funds being available. And so we will have some meetings coming up in the next couple of weeks, internal meetings, to talk about how we work with that short-term and long-term financing, because whether it's 30 days float, 60 days float, or 6 years or 10 years float, we've got to anticipate that. We're moving forward.
Have we ever done that before? Have we ever had an instance where we tried to get kind of federal funding in and hope to pray to get there? And
No, sir.
so this is a first for us.
This is the first.
And any other muds? And none of the other muds you think that in our area have? Okay.
And I would tell you, even the counties do not chase a lot of federal funds because timing is unpredictable and you don't always know upfront what your local participation match is.
Or when or how long?
Right.
Yeah. Okay.
Very good. Okay, the next is the attorney's report.
Good evening. I do not have anything general to cover with y'all this evening. I do have 11 and 12 to cover with y'all. Happy to answer the general questions before we move to item 11. All right. Item 11, resolution concerning developed district status. So this is new, obviously, for a couple of our directors. So we've got a memorandum in there when this first came out in 2020. SB2 in your packet. So historically, districts had a 8% maintenance tax rollback rate, meaning that they could increase their revenue from maintenance taxes to 8% without being subject to a potential rollback election to roll it back to a rate that would produce no more than 8% more revenue on the maintenance tax. Being specific about maintenance tax, because debt service is not part of the calculation. Debt service, you levy whatever you need to make your debt service payments. You're not going to restrict that and potentially default on your bonds. So that's not part of the equation. If folks wanted to force a rollback election, they would have to petition, and following a petition, then you could be subject to a rollback election if you exceeded that 8%. Senate Bill 2 in 2019 changed that framework somewhat. So it created 3 different classes. I don't really focus on the low tax rate because even we got pretty low tax rates in the Woodlands, but 2.5 cents. I've not seen a whole lot of districts that have 2.5 cents. So that's one category we kind of set to the side. So then it's between developed and developing. And we had some public comments on that topic. So the metric that the state came up with was whether or not a district has constructed the infrastructure, the facilities necessary to serve 95% of the projected ultimate build out in the district. And if you have constructed that over that threshold, then you're considered a developed district. If you have not yet met that metric, then you are still considered a developing district. If you're a developing district, you keep the historical 8% rollback rate, and people have to petition to force a rollback election. If you're on the other side and you've met that metric of the 95%, you're considered a developed district, and your rollback rate drops from 8% to 3.5%. So pretty significant, over half reduction in your rollback rate. And if you exceed that rollback rate, there's no petition requirement anymore. You're automatically subject to a rollback election. So this is going to be an issue across the state this year with what we're seeing on appreciation on houses. Now, of course, people are protesting, and that will bring rates down some, or values down some, but not enough to make this not an issue. I mean, right now, on preliminaries, come up 47, we're at 19.5% increase. So let's just say protests knock that down by half and get it down to 10%. Well, 10% still, more than either 3.5% or 8%. We're not talking about setting your tax rate right now. That will be in a few months, but this will kind of drive the discussion about your tax rate, because you may want to go lower than what the minimum is, but you know what you would have to go under to avoid a potential rollback election. So what we've done for all our district clients is push this issue to the district engineers to make the determination and certify as to whether you are a developer or a developing district, because they're the ones who have the best information as far as what infrastructure you've constructed, what your projected ultimate build out is, et cetera. And so for all of our district clients, they fill out this form that's attached to your resolution, and they certify as to whether or not you are a developed or developing district. So that's who makes the decision, is the engineer, based on their information about whether you're a developed or developing district. Now, that decision is made on an annual basis, so it can change. It can be one way one year, one way the other. I think what happened last year was this district is kind of on the razor edge between developed or developing, so it can go either way. For whatever reason, the engineer changed his designation last year from developing to developed, but now this year it's developing. That's not a board of directors decision. That's, you rely on your engineer to make that determination. So you adopt a resolution based on the documentation that you received from your consultant engineer. That's LJA.
Is that residential and commercial? How do those two pull together?
And so if you look back here on page 42 of your packet, this is the resolution, the exhibit to the resolution that's signed by your engineer on page 45. And so what it says is that the estimated number required for projected full build out is 7,783, and the 95% is 7,934. Your operations may have what the actual number is that is active today, but according to your engineer, whatever that number is today is less than 7,394, because that's your threshold.
7,394 would get us to 95%.
Correct.
And what is our denominator again? 7,9 something?
7, that's the number right above it on 1A, 7783.
What page are you on?
Page 42.
Okay.
Right there.
Okay.
No, that 42, not the.
Oh, I see 1A.
Yeah.
Okay. So last year, we ended out the year as developed. That was what I heard. So how are we back to developing? And what have we done in the time that passed?
I couldn't answer that. That would be an engineer question. So if y'all want that answer, we can ask the engineer to give y'all
Yeah.
an update. Or
I would like to know, because your comment about razor thin of going either way, I'm just like, what's his basis?
And again, these numbers, they can change, and they're.
Is it just his opinion?
No.
Does it have something to do with the annexation? I would bet you that's what it is.
What? Mike, sorry.
We're annexing, or we're in the process of annexing, what is it, 6 acres, 5.6 acres,
Right.
6.5.
Yeah.
That may have something to do with that pushed us to the non-develop, or the still developing. That acreage was not probably in the calculation last.
Yeah.
That we haven't annexed it yet. So maybe we should be developed. But if we declare we're developed, and I guess it sounds like it's up to Donnie, we can go back to developing. If with this annexation, we have 250 more units that put us below 95%.
And again, this just starts at your top threshold as you consider your tax rate, above which you would be subject to an automatic election. Y'all may say, we want to go lower than that. And so it doesn't matter whether it's 8% or 3.5%. But that's your starting point to know, okay, if I go over this, then I can potentially be subject to an election.
Remind me what we did with our tax rate last year. Wasn't it the O&M side where we put in some padding there? We manipulated the O&M versus the bond.
I do not have that off the top of my head.
Okay, I do remember. Well, we'll be setting the tax rate at what month? September?
We should get certifieds in July, and so we'll probably be having the discussion about recommendations for tax rate in August, and then setting our tax rate in September.
Okay.
You'll publish a rate not to exceed, excuse me, you'll make that decision at the August meeting, and then you'll come back in September to formally adopt tax rate.
I have 2020's breakdown if it will help. Okay, for those of you, I have a man on camera following you with RW Beers. But in 2020, we levied a total rate of 24.5, and it was divided up by maintenance 11.5 and debt service 13. In 2021, we decreased that total rate to 20.925, and that was made up of maintenance of 11.625 and debt service of 0.0925. So we did increase maintenance, and
I think what we did, it's coming back to me now, I think we went to the effective rate. I think we went to the effective rate.
that's right.
Because the way the debt service was scheduled, we were able to take some of the debt service down and move it over to M&O.
Okay, it's coming back to me more too. Very good.
Debt service continues to decline over the next coming years too.
Good job.
We'll be here in August to talk about the total tax rate and our recommendation and what impact it could have. Either, I'm not sure how I understand developing district, but either the developing district and the 8%.
Okay, thank you, Jan.
So is the engineer's report evaluated and studied, and we understand kind of the methodology? I think that's where Diane was.
One guy's opinion.
Just gets sent to you in the mail, and this you're either.
So he sends that to us for all the districts. He, fills out the form and says, okay, this is what your total number of projected ultimate connections are. This is, when you do the math, times 0.95, and that should get you what the 7394 is.
Yeah, I get that's the easy part. I think
Right.
I'm trying to understand, where does he come up with each of those numbers, and how does he determine this is the maximum, and what is that based on?
We don't go and ask him for all the. My guess is he's probably working through for these districts, I would imagine he's working through the sixth and final accounting as a starting point, how much capacity the districts have purchased for ultimate build out, and how much actually built out to date, and how much you have purchased capacity for ultimate build out for the authority. I would imagine that's probably a starting point. Now, I'm speculating to some extent, but for districts like these.
As conservation comes on, I mean, you could build out a lot more, but you're not using your max.
Well, what I'm talking about is the number of equivalent connections. So that's not how much you're actually water usage based on whether.
This
is just the equivalent connections of how many. So you know how many houses are here,
right.
How many units are out here right now, but on undeveloped land, that's somewhat of a guess, because you could have a piece of land that's projected for low density and then it goes higher density. So my guess, and I think we, based on y'all's questions, we need to have the engineer here to be able to answer those, but I'm guessing he's probably starting at the sixth and final accounting, which is when the district. So districts have to purchase water and sewer capacity from the river authority to be able to serve. And so we would go through periodic accountings every 5 years where districts would get updates on how much development that they had done and then what they projected for the next 5-year period. And they would purchase, reallocate capacity based on reality up to that point and then projections for the next 5 years. And then back, this was probably like 2000, what was the last accounting? 17. We had a last interim accounting where there was another 5-year projection out. And so everybody bought capacity that they needed, and that was kind of last call. And if anybody needs capacity after that, let's say they underestimated what they were going to need, they would have to either purchase capacity from another district or from the river authority to be able to get the capacity they needed if for some reason they had a more dense development or, higher facility or something like that. So my guess is he would be starting from that number of what he purchased in that last true up.
And you're right. Let me ask this. Is there any harm in deferring this? And we'll have the engineer here next month and get you the information in the packet ahead of time, what his calculation was based on, and just go through it.
A training session.
Well, yeah, just to kind of, it's kind of like in the org chart, who does he work for? Is he a state employee? Is he?
He's a consultant engineer.
So he's third party.
Correct.
Okay.
Who's engaged by the district.
Right, so they hired him.
Correct.
And how long is his term for?
So he's been an engineer for many years.
All mud districts are required to have an engineer of record.
Okay.
And their term is
our guy.
engineer of record. That's right.
Okay.
But we can ask for him to come next month to be able to answer those.
Just, and probably for you guys, but I'm on a learning curve here, so. Okay, that would be good.
All right. Well, we'll push that off to next month. Yeah.
And then 12, no updates there. We're still pending on the annexation with.
Okay. So number 13, discuss and review information on the recent content agreement related to the Howard Hughes 1488 commercial project.
In your packet is a series of documents related to that topic. We put this on the agenda at the request of Laura and I think maybe Hugh. This particular content was kind of handled different than most are done. Most are done in the very beginning before you've actually sold bonds. This particular project of 1488 had bonds already sold. So the content that's in there was tweaked a little bit. It has some special provisions that aren't typically put in a content, but there's a copy of the agreement in your packet, and then the template is also in your packet. I guess at this point, I'm just available, Brian and I think Jan is here to answer any questions you may have about that process and try to get you comfortable with how that works.
Maybe I could start if you don't mind. So we really appreciate you pulling it together. So as a kind of a newcomer coming in, and we're kind of in the middle, or I don't know if it's the middle or the end of the process. We're already in a process that's already started, right? And I think maybe the last meeting, I heard a few things that I just wanted to kind of understand a little more fully to see if we have something coming up in the future. It seems like a good working kind of case to study and to evaluate. So us new guys can kind of understand it a little better. The first thing that comes to my mind as a businessman is, what are the economics of it, right? I've got to believe there's got to be appropriate economics to want to do this. And I think you guys use a term of assessed value. Is that right? Assessed value? So it's a new term to me. And I wanted to try to understand what assessed value means. Why is it important to us? I can see it in the context of how much water you might they might be consumed in water rates and revenue and against installation costs and reimbursement. There's some economics there that start kind of building up, and the picture starts emerging in my mind of, is this an economic thing for the district to do, or is not an economic? Just the number asset value or assessed value doesn't tell you that story quite yet. So that was the kind of the first thing that got me thinking along this line.
That value is essentially what the value that's going to be created for that project on the tax rolls. That's the projection for the assessed value.
Assessed value and taxable value, those terms are used somewhat interchangeably, which can be confusing.
Yeah, so if I'm a board and you're coming to me asking for money, I'm asking you, so how do you get to an assessed value number? That's what I'm trying to get underneath the buildup of assessed value, which I can see in this information. And well, where did that number come from? How does that get determined?
That 50 million.
The 50 odd million. And then if I look at the revenue side coming in versus the expenditure side that the MUD's going to be putting up, that $4.3 million, I can do some pretty simple math and come up with a rate of return, and it doesn't look great. And I'm wondering, so why would we do that? Is there some other extenuating circumstance that would say, no, this is still good for the MUD and good for the residents to pay for this? So I'm just trying to replay a little bit of the economics, not trying to, rescore this. I'm just trying to understand. That's all.
Understood.
Is that okay? I mean, am I out of line?
Maybe if I just back up and start with what are the advantages of looking at this content and having the developer proceed with getting the land developed? Our purpose.
Just make sure that everybody understands who you are and what your role is. I don't know
I'm
that.
Jan Bartholomew, R.W. Baird, we're the district's financial advisor. I've probably been working with Woodland since 1980, a long time. So
Financial advisor.
financial.
For each of the MUDs.
We recommend tax rates. We look at if there's opportunities to refund your bonds. We were the ones that sold all your bonds when you were in the bond selling mode.
Okay.
So back in 2019, we had about $6.9 million remaining in authorized bonds. We have a tract out in the district that's almost 15 acres, 14.8 acres, and it's along, you can step in any time. It's on 1488, that area, and it's probably going to be developed as commercial, just because of its location. That's what everyone's always said. So the board discussed in 2019, well, why don't we file a bond application and include the infrastructure to serve that tract in this bond application? So we did. And we sold bonds back then. And if you look at it today, that was a very smart move because we sold about 1.5%.
Interest rates, yeah, sure.
And if we were selling today, we'd be above 3.
Do you guys predict the stock market at all? That would be handy.
I couldn't predict what even happened this week. But anyways, so the way we presented it the first time is the residents are paying debt service on this outstanding debt. So to have it sit there and not put in the infrastructure so that Howard Hughes can go out and market the property for commercial development is, that's what the whole reason the bonds were sold. And so we've come to this, and in the past, the way the bonds were sold is that you would enter into a content, they would develop the value, and then the bonds would be sold to reimburse. This is a unique situation because, first of all, it's a small tract. Secondly, it's because your last remaining authorized bonds. And we're paying, the residents and other commercial users are paying the debt service on these bonds. So the analysis that we prepared that's in your packet basically shows what happens if development occurs on that tract over, I'm going to just say, a 2-year period. It could take 3 years, but what happens to the district's tax rate? And rather, I don't know if you can read that, it's pretty small print,
Yeah.
but basically what it says is that we're able to reduce your tax rate as a result of this additional value. Now, how much we reduce it in each year would be up, for when the value comes on. Values, as you know, from you've been reading in the paper, are going up everywhere, so we just had an estimate of what the commercial value should be built on that tract, on that 14.8 acres. And that just showed you that if we don't build on it, then you're gonna be still carrying for the burden of the debt than if it was built on. And it's really the last big commercial tract that can add value to your district to, again, support the reduction of your tax rate going forward. So those are what the analysis show. When we talk about assessed value, that's the increase in those footnotes. We talk about the increases in value over 2 years. Those are just values that we took very, very conservative, what the appraisal district had in value on similar improvements. Yeah, what did we look at? Office building or what were we looking at? That?
The commercial.
Yeah, just commercial. And what was the average value per acre of commercial? So we don't really have this is going to be exactly what's built on there, but we wanted to show the board that it's a positive to, go ahead and allow the content so we can add value there because the bonds have already been sold to the infrastructure to serve that traffic.
So I just want to play that back a little bit if I could. So you went and did the bond, you got the money. It's like, maybe in my mind, I'm thinking about, I went and got a loan. Now I think about something to use it for.
Well,
And if I don't use it, then I'm just paying the interest and I'm not getting any revenue. It seems like it's a little bit kind of a.
Use it for one of the, again, I'm trying to explain all the pages that are included in the packet. When you make an application to the Texas Commission on Environmental Quality, the governmental agency that regulates all that, TCQ in our world, make an application, the engineer puts together a cost summary. And in that cost summary is this tract and the infrastructure to serve it.
Right.
And so it wasn't like we made up that, that too is an estimate because he has to say, okay, what does it take to build that 15-acre infrastructure for that tract? So.
And when was that done?
2019.
So the bonds were done in 17? So I heard you say the bonds were done in 19 as well.
2019.
All at the same time.
Mm-hmm. And interest rates is very, very low. So that's I don't have many districts that sold bonds at 1.5%. So,
well, that's just timing. Yeah, it's good luck. It's good luck.
Totally.
Right.
But if we were waiting today, another way to look at it, say, okay, well, let's wait today, which is really not a decision because we can't. We've already sold this. I just want to make sure the new board members in particular know that we've sold this debt to provide the infrastructure to that tract. And Howard Hughes wants to, I believe, and Dan can step in here, wanted to enter into his content so that when he does develop the tract, that he can ask for reimbursement out of the district's funds. You have it on hand, those funds. And he would pre-fund the infrastructure.
And 100% reimbursement is versus 80 or 75 or 50.
So again, the TC.
Seems like we're not getting full value for our bonds. I'm just trying to understand the first decision. And maybe this is not the time to go through this. I'm just trying to, I really am trying to understand because we have this come up again. We have an annexation potentially coming up, right?
True.
That'll be the exact same kind of thinking. Maybe, we got, there's costs, there's infrastructure, there's money to be spent, money to be reimbursed.
We can get a great deal on some money. Let's go for it.
Yeah, and I don't want to get into.
Sure, I understand the confusion of full value. Can you elaborate a little bit on that?
Well, I'm trying to understand at this stage in our development, is it typical for a MUD to just say, I'm going to reimburse? Because that doesn't look like a great payout to me. And as a resident, I don't think it's a great payout.
And
right.
That to me, because we don't have enough value or the tax rate doesn't go up.
And maybe I'm not understanding it. That's why I'm getting back to my first economic kind of question is this a good economic decision for the homeowners? The people who are paying the bill.
Anytime you can add value, particularly at your state of development, which you're almost fully developed, I'm gonna use the word almost, then you want to be able to either stabilize your tax rate. I mean, we've been dropping your tax rate over the last few years pretty significantly. But we're gonna get to a point where we have to stabilize it because we're not gonna be adding any value.
Understood.
Okay?
Right.
So this is a track that can add value.
We add value, but quality of life issues and potential flooding that could come from the property detracts from the value, I think. I wanted to ask another question that had to do with the single-family dwelling unit equivalents that we discussed in the developing versus developed. Those hookups, I'll call them, they sound like an asset that we have that we pay SJRA for. So we will be using them as we expand MUD 47 in the northwest quadrant, right? So when I look at this whole picture, the investment we've made of 4.3 million is in fact higher than that because we'll be using our asset, the SFDUEs, on this development. Am I understanding that correctly?
I'm gonna say not, no. I mean, we sold bonds to just provide the,
That's the bond side of it, but I'm talking the SFDUE side of it.
Each MUD with input from developers and staff assigned a value to undeveloped property. This particular track, I'll have to go back and see if it was part of what we referred to as the sixth and final accounting.
It was.
So it was, yeah, there was a value of single-family dwelling unit equivalent value assigned to that property.
What would that be approximately, money-wise? How much, $1,000 or, I don't have any idea.
By any chance?
Not very many.
So it's give or take $3,500 per SFDUE. So if it's 100,
3,500, okay,
give or take, round numbers.
okay.
Right.
Yeah, for water and sewer.
Yeah, for water and sewer, assume it's a 1-to-1 ratio. So if you have 100.
Yeah. So are we planning on an apartment complex there that would use maybe 250 SFDUEs? Is that how it would work? Is that how an apartment is calculated as far as SFDUEs? I'm just looking at the value coming from MUD 47 on this project.
Well, I can answer that question if you'd like.
Oh, sure. Go for it, Dan. Thank you very much.
We're not planning to build apartments.
Okay. All right. What are you planning?
Same thing we've discussed at every meeting we've had with the.
At the strip mall.
Yeah. Commercial center.
Okay. So it's not going to be an apartment complex. Okay.
There are no plans to do that at this time.
Thank you.
So if I'm trying to explain this to my neighbor, and that's kind of where I'm trying to get my head around so I can represent the community well and represent this board and things that we're doing here. The decision was made to go borrow $6+ million
right,
with the anticipation of using it for future development.
most of it. About 4.3 is just for this track. The
Okay.
rest of it was for other projects in the district.
So we borrow money. We say, if there's a development, we can use it for that. That doesn't seem like a good reason to justify using it for that. I mean, it's a little bit backwards in my mind. That's why I'm trying to get my arms around this. Like, I wouldn't go borrow money from the bank and then go, what am I gonna go buy? Right? I would say, I want to go buy a house, I want to go buy a car, I need to go borrow some money, and I have to do it for these reasons. And I would justify it for these reasons. So I'm trying to understand, why do I go borrow money and then go out there and look at it's gonna take 36 years to get your money back? That just doesn't seem like a good investment. Maybe I'm missing that if it's based on this projected yearly revenue.
36 years to get your money back.
Yeah.
So all I'm doing is just looking at your commercial property current estimated value, where it's 4.3 million, and it says 100 projected yearly revenue.
No, so if you
Is
go
that
to
something different?
the one here, it's on
What
page.
This is what I want to go. I'm not maybe not reading information.
61.
I just want to understand it.
This cash flow on page 61.
Okay.
So it will also be presented when we levy your tax, so you get to learn how to read this cash flow. But it shows what you currently have in the bank, what your value is, and what tax rate you currently levy. First line, the 2022 tax rate you currently levy. Okay, tax years or a year behind.
Is this the table that says 2021 taxable value increase?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
Sorry, go ahead.
And so what we showed in here is, again, the increase that could occur on that track over the next 2 years. You can see that the debt service that the district currently has outstanding ends in 2029. So I'm not following the 36 years or whatever. That's what I'm trying to help you understand this cash flow. So this debt service, this bond issue we sold, as well as any other bond issues you have outstanding, will all be paid off in 2029. Every year we look at this value, whatever this value is.
Prior, I'm trying to understand what value you're talking about.
Okay, the assessed value, prior year.
Okay.
It says prior year because
Taxable value, the same thing as assessed value, okay.
it's the same thing as assessed value. In when we did your tax rate last year, we assumed flat growth because we didn't have this project. We weren't looking at adding this project. The growth of this. So this, and to represent what impact it would have on the district, we added value on that track from the commercial center to show with that additional value, how does that help the residents reduce your tax rate? And that's what your neighbors would be interested in knowing is we're building that out there and I'm going to be able to reduce my tax rate by a little under a penny. Going forward, I don't get to consider that if I don't develop that track. And this is really the last track to develop, right? And so.
And to Hugh's point, it is backwards. This is the first time, I've been doing this for 30 years.
That's good, so I'm not just losing my mind.
No, we did it differently.
Yeah, with most MUDs, the developer upfronts the cost, AV is created, then we come to you, we have a content with you that says, if we create the AV, then we get reimbursed. You're gonna pay us back after you develop someone's AV on it. So I was as surprised as anybody when I was told that the district went ahead and sold the bonds for this infrastructure. And so I came to their district after they had sold the bond, said, okay, ready to go build this land. It helps us because we can go pre-engineer it, and if we have a buyer up there, we can get in there about 6 or 8 months earlier if we have all the plans and everything in place. If the market strikes, you have the right buyer. The other thing, so it is, your point is exactly right, Hugh. It's different than anything I've done with any MUD in the past.
Yeah.
The other thing is, I want to make a point on is, we're upfronting all the costs still. So the developer is going to be paying for all the detention, all the water lines, all the sewer lines, all the drainage lines. And only after all those things are in the ground, there are some thresholds in the content that says the district will pay us back after so much is developed.
Okay, and maybe, where my mind is what would be the difference in economics if you didn't go sell the bonds? That you're doing, and that's kind of incremental economics is what you're doing. I'm trying to look at the whole thing.
Well,
If you hadn't sold the bonds at all and you hadn't had the reimbursement, you didn't take 4.3 million out of them, your tax rates here would look a little different as well.
It would look different.
Yeah.
But I'm pretty sure Dan would be coming to you to ask for what has been the norm in the development of the woodlands, and that is.
Right, and as a fully developed MUD, we may have a conversation around that. Well, okay, I don't know if that's what all the residents would want, and those are the ones who are kind of footing the bill. So I'm just trying to get my head around that process and
Sold the
sequence.
bonds. So now the facts are that the bonds have been sold and we're paying the debt service.
I get it now. Now I understand.
Now we're trying to show the board that it would be a benefit to all the residents to increase the value out there. It would be a benefit to your tax rate.
It is definitely more revenue, but the reason I see the payoff as being so much longer is, let's say the property, its assessed value is $50 million and the taxes are levied on that based on per $100, just like my house, right? And so if we gave $4.3 million for that development, in order to fill that cup with $4.3 million in taxes, as our tax rate drops, we're talking many more years than 2029 before we recover that. So in one of the handouts, it says the payoff is 36 years. And I see our tax rate, going into the lower teens. And so that prolongs the time it takes us to get that
We
4.3 million
paid-
back.
Make sure you understand, we paid off all the bondholders in 2029.
Yeah.
We
But
paid
just as an
principal and
investment.
interest, so we're not paying any more, like if you took out a loan, and that's a better way to say it, if you took out a loan, it will be fully paid off in 2029. This includes other debt that you have outstanding.
Sure.
And we're paying it at the lowest interest rate. So now we've incurred the debt. We were, one of the reasons behind all this is there's some interest in developing that property so that they can add commercial improvement, for which it's always been, I'm gonna use the word designated for. Like most of the woodlands is, residential is gonna go here, commercial is gonna go here, multifamily is gonna go over there. But you're exactly right. This is a little outside the norm. Now we're just coming to I think Howard Hughes is coming to the board to say, we want to put the value on the books so that you can, if you will, I'm going to use the word subsidize the tax rate. Otherwise, the residents and other commercial owners, the existing taxpayers out there are actually paying for the debt service, the principal and interest on these bonds.
Can I just verify one thing? So on the page 59, I think, the one that shows this projected taxable value, which I think we're saying is assessed value, right?
Yes.
It says proposed commercial property current estimated value, and over on the right, it says projected yearly revenue at 99% collections. There's a 1488, and then there's an annexation.
Right.
Total. Yeah, so it's even worse, actually. I took $123,000 of revenue to pay off $4.3 million just without even interest, and that's 36 years. And that's where I got the 36-year number. Okay. In a context of getting a reimbursement and a return on money, it's not really good. And maybe I got to get my mind thinking differently because I'm a utility now, but a utility should work on a rate of return and capital invested and should be a reasonable return. And this doesn't seem like one to me. So just trying to understand how we get over that hurdle. I got to explain that to somebody. That's where I go. To me, that's what the residents are getting.
Another way to look at it is if we don't develop the track, then we don't even have $100,000.
But then you're saying, okay, I want to argue that, but you said, I went and borrowed some money. I now need to go do something with it. And that's.
Well, we borrowed it for a purpose. So keep that in mind too.
Yeah.
It wasn't like we just said, I want to go spend all my remaining authorized bonds. We borrowed it for a purpose. And now
I would expect to get a little better return on that. That's all I'm trying to point out here. I just think it's.
I don't have the individual debt service schedule that goes with this
Yeah.
bond issue, but I can sure send it to you and say, because we structure the principal and interest
Yeah.
payments on an annual basis to be able to pay it off.
I think I need to go to school on the whole funding and bond stuff.
No,
I really do. I need training on that. I just don't.
I don't have the individual schedule for this one.
The thing I wanted us to invest in was more crushed granite walking paths, but that was not popular among some of our people that always make public open comment, so.
I think just one of the things we talk about in future possibilities and projects and stuff, it is important to note that y'all have exhausted all of your.
We have no money left, yeah.
You have no authorization left to go and issue tax-backed bonds. If you were to go and issue bonds in the future, they have to be revenue-backed bonds. We've talked about that for a couple of older districts, if they needed to go issue bonds for rehab of some of their infrastructure, that's how they would have to do it, short of going and having a bond election and having to go and go through that process. So y'all are likely done with the development bond issues. That I would be very surprised if y'all did a bond issue to back our revenues. If you do a bond issue in the future, it's probably going to be for rehab your infrastructure.
I see us probably, I believe likely spending $100,000 easily on flood mitigation projects in the future in that area. So it's Bugger.
That would come out of your operating
All
account
right.
or revenue bonds, but we wouldn't be selling a bond issue that small. Doesn't make economic sense.
All right.
But still, it's like, how do you tell all of your friends and neighbors, this is a great deal? I can't
Well,
wrap my hands around
I
that.
don't think
We're
we
not
look at
here
like
necessarily
one
to make great
improvement.
deals, since we're here and our.
No, I
underlying
understand,
reason-
but
Our underlying reason, and you can go look it up for MUDs, is to assist in the development of communities. Okay. And look, I was a banker. I was out there making lots of money. I did deals, best deals I could do to make money for my stockholders, right? But this is our residents. And the purpose of the MUDs is development. Pure and simple.
There comes a stage in our development, though, when we are elected by the residents to do everything in their best interest. And I believe that we've reached that. And I don't think that this was in our best interest. That's why MUDs are elected. That is their purpose initially when they're founded by the developer. And I found from going to conventions where they do continuing education that MUDs, as developed as ours, do contribute a lesser percentage, not 100%, more like 50, 60, 70, or get something else out of the deal. And so that's why this was kind of a campaign issue. And it is a bugger of an investment. I would not be interested in spending 4.3 million to get 100,000 back. I mean, the return is much longer than it is going to take us to finish in 2029, paying off all of our bonds.
So thanks for that. I mean, sorry, that was probably a little bit of a whirlwind.
I want to make sure y'all understand, what
I understand.
the process has been.
Yeah.
We haven't really looked. I would say that if there was an apartment complex on here, or somebody can probably use that as an example, that we wouldn't be saying, okay, that apartment complex is only that much value. How much are we going to get off the taxes? Remember the Woodlands over the years has had a lot more value to be able to support what I call their per acre cost, if you will.
Mhm.
And we're down really to bare bones value, even on the commercial side. So that's another, if you will, fact that is, makes the numbers look probably from your perspective a little bit harder, but that's when the board decided to go ahead. We've even dropped values since then. I mean, even not values, tax rates, but values have continued really to grow and whatnot. So.
And that's going to change over time. I get
Right.
that. We're in this kind of cycle right now, certainly. So can I ask just maybe one more question? So the development now, so there's a concept, there's a debate here, a little discussion. Is it apartments, not apartments? No, it's going to be commercial retail. Is that an implicit agreement that what's going to be done, or is that just up to you, up to the developer to decide, well, maybe we're actually going to change our mind? I'm trying to understand how tightly linked are these things together or not? Or are they just?
This comes up from time to time. District bylaws do not have the power to sell. So this property was already in the district. And so sometimes if there's property outside of the district and you're looking to annex it in, there can be some discussion about, well, what's land use going to be as part of an agreement to annex. But that also runs very close to the line of districts attempting to zone.
Okay,
So
and they don't have that
they do not have
agreement.
the-
Okay. So we're left on an outcome that we just don't know yet.
Well, what would
We kinda
happen is
committed to
if
something.
And we don't know what it is either. We don't have a client out there yet. We don't have a purchaser yet. We know the first purchaser will be, and when we get somebody under contract.
Oh, we already got the money. And we gotta go spend
I'll share that
it.
information with you, but we're selling our property. So it's property.
Yeah, I get that, right?
Where it would become an issue is if you had a anticipated use and you have capacity associated with that use, and then the use changes and you need a lot more capacity that you don't own. Then it comes back to you about, okay, well, what are we gonna do about that?
So it seems like since this one is kind of, we put the cart before the horse for whatever reason. We're incurring costs every year that it doesn't get developed, and it's purely at your discretion, right? We're incurring.
It's at the market's discretion. We are actively marketing the land.
Yeah.
The market's finicky right
But
now.
you're the one, at the end of the day, Howard Hughes Corporation is the one that's going to be determining when you get the deal you want, right? And then something starts happening. So we're incurring cost every
paying
year
for
and
it.
paying for the debt service until the revenue line could be moved out. The start of revenue, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, maybe never, right? I mean, weird things happen. Let's say it's 3, 4, or 5 years. So our 100% reimbursement, we're incurring more than 100% of the cost because we're borrowing money to do that. And we're not getting revenue to offset it. So that's where my mind kind
We're
of
still
goes.
paying for the
Yeah,
money
the
too.
cash flow on this thing gets
Yeah.
worse and worse every year. It doesn't get developed.
I mean, you are getting
Right.
some revenue, because remember, vacant land gets taxed as well. And so you are getting, I want to make sure.
That's probably not going to pay for this meeting, right? I'm just trying to understand, right? Just trying to understand the
Considering all the paid people here. no.
dynamics
I don't charge.
of this process. I'm just trying to understand the dynamics of the process going forward. And I don't know if we can do anything about it. I don't know, but I'm just suggesting that that's kind of what is in front of us, right?
Yeah.
That's the deal that's been cut. And now I'm trying to understand, now I understand why it feels a little weird, because it is a
It
little.
is.
Okay,
It's unusual.
okay.
But when the district made the decision to go forward, they believed they were doing it for the right reasons, because that's one of the reasons they exist is to be a financing vehicle, and interest rates were so
Yep,
low.
understand the role.
And they still needed
Yep.
to develop that track with infrastructure. Because that's
Yeah.
that's the purpose of what the district has always done.
And is there a statute of limitations on this? Is this been the development just not happened for 10 years and we're still
I
on
think
the hook to
your
reimburse?
your reimbursement agreement is under the content, that's what, 15 years?
15 years?
That's a lot of time.
Okay. Yikes.
That's
Okay.
beyond that 2029 even.
Right, your bonds will be paid off. So. I'm just.
No, I understand.
We've got to keep the 4.3 million in a little fund.
In the capital projects fund.
Yeah, so nothing's happening until you guys,
Find a client and
I mean, you're doing work,
I will
but
give you an update on that. In our office, we go through our authorization for expenditures, we'll ask the bosses, if we can go spend some money. And as soon as that gets signed up, we hire an engineer, do the drainage impact analysis. And once he does the drainage impact analysis, we'll know how big our retention ponds need to be to serve the area. And we'll have the engineers start to design the facility probably in the next, I'd say 60 to 90 days, you'll be designed under the serve those.
but you need to have a client in there too. You're just not doing this on spec.
Regardless of how we subdivide the property, we know where most of the water and sewer has to.
Right.
So our land plan will take that into account.
All right.
All right.
Very good. Thank you,
Thanks
Jan.
for taking all the
Dan.
time. I appreciate it.
It is great.
And if you have more questions, just make sure I'll be out here for sure. I can come back to you.
Okay, all right. I do need
Talking more.
finance 101, I think.
Don't be
Word
fooled.
for it. Okay, thanks.
Okay, so number 14, I think we might have covered, but receive staff information on the SJRA wastewater strategic plan and schedule for hosting workshop to review stakeholder meetings and path forward.
Yeah, we're gonna do that on the
The
first.
first,
Yeah.
yeah.
June 1, and it starts at 8 a.m. if you want to do the budget as well.
That's right.
Okay, so the GM report, Jim.
A few things to highlight from our trustee meeting. The, water forum that our Chamber of Commerce has been wanting to host for several months has finally been set for July the 20th at 10 a.m. We'll be providing more information on that. I'm told there may be a virtual option for those of you that want to tune in but not go in person. So we'll more to come on that. Just a recap of the persons that I'm told will be attending are the Woodlands Water Agency, San Jacinto River Authority, Lone Star Groundwater District, Houston Advanced Research Center, HARC, the Harris Galveston Subsidence District. The head of that group lives here in the Woodlands, Mike Turco, who also was the lead for the USGS office here in this region. So Mike's a good resource, and look forward to that. And then Quadvest, the private water operator. Those are the invitees on total. I've been reporting that we had the new director workshop on June the 3rd. Thank y'all for attending on that. We had great turnout on that, and glad that worked out. Mike Mooney reported we're about 90% complete with our automated metering upgrade. So we're hitting delays in delivery and inventory at this point. So any updates for that?
We got 185 or so meters in last week, and we installed 95 of them yesterday.
So anyway, just a delay in getting the final meters to get that project complete. I did report on TACUS. I had one of the directors that was wanting to know where we stood with the system damages, collecting money, and I'm looking for my notes. I think we've collected about $68,000. I have a $30,000 check that the release is being back and forth between our attorneys. I expect to get that this week. There's still about another $268,000 that remains to be negotiated and a settlement on that. What's complicating it is when damage was done to a number of the mud systems, they hit a service line tubing we call blue poly, which is an old, outdated, inferior product that you can't fix it. The company that makes it has been out of business for years. So we have made the decision for many years, when we have a break on that portion, we go in and replace it all with a newer product. So as TACUS or their contractors broke those lines, we went in and replaced the whole thing. So our attorney says you might want to use that to negotiate rather than full settlement for that damage, or partial, because you gained something in that. So that's what we're looking at. And we're dealing with 5 or more subcontractors. It's not just one. And if you follow this topic much at all, you know they really have tremendous rights to be in the public right away, and we're at a disadvantage dealing with this. And there's been some discussion at some point, maybe our legislators need to rethink how that part of the code is written, and I would support that.
Okay.
The other thing is, we reported Dr. Sekula Gibbs attended the trustee meeting, recommended that they live stream those meetings, wanting an update on the odor issues that have been part of the Lakeside Cove community for quite a while. We're working to get a written report out to her and the community. And just to recap, we have spent about $500,000 out there trying to be a good neighbor and look at things that might improve the situation. And when I say improve, I mean improve their perspective. We have taken hundreds of tests, hydrogen sulfide tests. Not once have we had a concentration exceed the TCEQ limits for a wastewater plant, not once. So this has been an effort to be a good neighbor and see what we can do that might help things. So I think we've expended about all of the resources we can for a short-term solution. It's probably going to.
And she's happy?
No, they're still experiencing from time to time an odor issue, but they live right next to a wastewater treatment plant.
Yeah.
Yeah, Jim, I think you described it well, that while you haven't had any violations, there's still people with, there's 40 complaints in the last several years of smelling something. So their nose is a little stronger than the required elevate, maybe the requirements are.
And
whatever.
that's interesting,
Right.
Because literally we have gone out there, we tried to respond immediately for many, many months. And we would go out and we didn't smell anything. We would talk to neighbors out walking around. They didn't smell anything, but it's one nose can detect it where literally another one cannot. So it's a struggle.
And we spent $500,000 so far. Wow.
Yeah. And then just a few nice compliment emails in the back of your packet. Please take note of those.
Good, congratulations.
That concludes my report.
All right, did you have anything to add to the trustees report?
Jim did a great job there. They will be on the agenda next meeting to vote on recording the meetings. So I'm glad to see that was put on there. And the request to kind of have a feedback and summary to the public on the odors was also accepted. To say, yes, we'll do something about it. I'll show you what has been done. Because I think the perspective from the public side is we don't know what you're doing. You tell us you're doing stuff, so tell us, right? So we can then share that, I think, right? Something
Yes.
along those lines.
Yes, we're going to summarize it. We have had several virtual meetings with the community, Lakeside Cove community. But anyway, we're at a point now where we can kind of summarize where we are and what the status is for everyone. Now, I did want to emphasize for our mud boards, we will be presenting your draft. We will start working on your budgets in July. We will present your draft budget in August, and then you'll have a chance to review it and comment, and then we'll come back to you in September recommending that you act on that budget. So that's the process for our mud budgets.
Good, thanks.
Maybe the only other thing I would add is that our Mike Mooney was supported to be the agency rep, right?
Oh, yeah.
So that was good. And, yep. I think that's it. You've covered most everything else. One thing I just kind of picked up on was that there is you guys probably know all this, that there's a Trinity River surface water option of, what is it, 5,000, 50,000 acre feet? Is that right? So we had a little chat around that. That's $250,000 a year cost right now, but we could go to 1.5 million when it moves to surface area agreement, which I have no idea what that means, but that's what I heard. Service area, not service. Okay. And is that something that's imminent coming up? Because we all share in that based on some pro
We're
rata.
negotiating that service area agreement currently. And so if we're trying to stall it because we don't need the water anytime soon. And so it's kind of between us and the Trinity River Authority as to when it actually gets in place.
So that's something that is going to happen. It's just a matter of when.
I mean, the water is needed in Montgomery County before 2070.
This is the same project, well, this is the same issue that we
We were
voted,
talking about a year ago.
and we voted yes for, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay,
Okay, thanks, that's it.
discuss any matters for placement on future agenda. So we've added a few things already today. Is there anything else anyone would like to add?
We'll be bringing the Bear Branch
Budget?
maintenance budget. You just heard of it.
Very good. Okay, all in favor of adjourning the meeting, say aye.
Aye.
All right.
Let's adjourn. Thank you.